point that Deb made about that beer there. And he has some that date all the way back to the early 1800s. So to ask us the question, how old is this bottle, please welcome Ken Harris.
I'm going to talk to you about a hobby I really love. I'm sure a lot of us have hobbies that kind of bring out the personality in us and kind of bring out the true spirit. I've been collecting bottles, like Jim said, for over 20 years. I started in high school, shows you how old I am, on a survey crew in New Jersey. And one of the things that we did is that we surveyed property lines along old homesteads. I would go in and research how old the property was. We'd look at the dates of the house. Typically, they were like log cabins, old log cabins that were built first with a house on the front of it, and then we would go down the property lines, supposedly working, but really looking for old bottles. and the first time I saw this was in a car. We were driving along in our truck, slammed on the brakes, got out of the car, and ran over to a dump and just started digging. I said, what the heck are they doing? Went over there and they said they're digging old bottles. So I started getting into it. And one of the main questions that I had was, how do you tell a bottle's old? Because a lot of times, you go out in some of these dumps in the woods and you pull a bottle out and you say, this must be an old bottle. But most of the time it isn't, because most dumps are fairly recent. There are three things you look at. You look at mold seams, you look at the bottom of the bottle, and you look at the top of the bottle. And I've got, one of the first things I'm going to talk about is the mold seam. Typically, like this bottle right here is it's an old soda bottle. And you can see the mold seam. It only goes up to about the shoulder. When they made bottles, they blew the bottles into a mold, and then they cracked the mold, and they formed it. They stuck up whatever they could on the bottom to form the top. And the mold seams really indicate how old the bottles are. I've got one here where the mold seam goes all the way to the top. You can see, if I had more time, I'd pass these around, but kind of limited. The mold seam goes all the way to the top of the bottle. This indicates that this bottle was probably produced after 1930. These bottles, where the mold seam only goes up part way, was probably indicated 1860, somewhere around there. Then you look at the bottom of the bottle. This is a broken bottle, but I picked it up because it was such a cool looking bottle. It's an old free-blown champagne bottle, no mold seam at all. Typically, these bottles were blown on top of a kip-up, and then they were stretched all the way to form the neck, and then a bead of glass was put around to reinforce the neck. This is a really neat bottle. It goes back to about 1810. And it's, we went back and found this dump accidentally. This was the one that was sticking out of about 6 inches of dirt. And we dug through, and it was really cool because you're digging for treasure. The other types of molds, this is a 3-part mold. This dates back to about 1860. It's a beer bottle. You've got the mold around the top of the shoulder, and then you've got a mold that runs up and around like that. Lots of really cool looking bubbles in here. This also indicates, doesn't necessarily indicate how old they are, because there's a lot of glass that has bubbles in it. But you have to look at the seams. The other way of looking at a bottle is looking at the base. This is a patent medicine back before the Drug Act in 1917. They could put whatever they wanted in these things. Turpentine, heroin, opium, and just sell it as medicine. After they blew the bottle into the mold, They took the bottle out of the mold, stuck a piece of glass on the end of an iron poker, stuck it onto the bottom of the bottle so it stuck out like this, and they formed the top. This is a very hand-formed top, and you can see there's a piece of glass that runs along the bottom of the bottle, and it's pretty sharp. And this is called a pontil. And this indicates that the bottle is about 1830. And I've got several examples of this. This is vermifuge that was used for worms in the South. And it was mostly turpentine. I guess people thought because the bottle tasted so awful, it cured the worms. The other part is the top of the bottle. I showed you this one. This is something that they just do to wrap the glass around. Because of the crudeness of it, you can pretty much tell that this was a very old bottle. Then you go all the way to the top, to the 1860, 1870. Let's get this thing out. This is a soda pop bottle, and this is where soda pop got its name. It's got It's got a little metal thing in here that when you finished half the soda pop, you pulled this metal thing out, shook it, pushed this thing down, and it made a popping sound. And that's how soda pop got its name. This is another really cool thing. This is a very crude top. It's got a marble in it, and it effectually did the same thing. When you finish the soda pop, you turn it upside down, and the marble would seal the top. And then as you got newer bottles up to around 1890, this is a bitters bottle. You have more elaborate, nicely made tops, not quite as crude. This is a mineral bottle. This dates back to maybe 1860, around the world, around the Civil War. And it also has a fairly crude top, but a fairly nice top as well. This is a machine-made bottle. You can see it's a very, very smooth, very, very elaborate, and it makes it a really neat bottle. Well, so anyway, as you can see, I really enjoy the hobby, and it makes a great pastime. And I've got probably about 300 bottles at home. So, really neat. Thank you.